Hello and welcome to today's episode, in which I try out an idea I've had of taking a previous recipe and adapting it a little bit and hopefully making some mulled wine cookies. I did the Halloween treats video a couple of months ago and I made some little spice cookies. They've been on my mind ever since because they're phenomenal, and they reminded me of a cookie that I used to have as a kid. I want to say peffernusse. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they're a little spice cookie and they've got a really thin kind of icing glaze on the top of them. I'm going to try and make them a little bit mulled wine flavoured. In my dish here, this is the flax mixture that I used in the previous cookies, but instead of water, I've used port. My hope is that the port in combination with the spices that I'll put in will add a little bit of a mulled wine kind of flavour to the cookies. For the glaze on the outside, I found a recipe that uses powdered sugar, icing sugar in the UK, and hot water. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I could use orange juice in place of the water and give a kind of orange flavour on the outside, which will go super nice with the spices and hopefully the kind of port flavour. I don't normally ice things like that, so I've got no idea if it's going to work. In case the idea goes badly, I'm going to do maybe a third of the batch in a little dust made from icing sugar and powdered tangerine peel. So this is dried peel, so just chucked them over the radiator, and then once they've dried out, stick them in a coffee grinder, make a nice little powder. I've used this on the truffles that I did a few months ago. I think the order I'm going to do things in, I'll do the wet mixture because I'm going to use ground almonds, so that'll give things a chance to soak. Then I'll do the dust, then we'll do the dry, combine things, and then get them in the oven. The oven, speaking of which, has been preheating at 170, which I want to say is like 340 Fahrenheit. When I did that first batch of cookies, I used coconut sugar and I think some golden castor sugar. This time, half the weight will be golden castor sugar and the other half will be light brown soft sugar. I'm going to have to tweak things a little bit, I think, because light brown soft sugar is moister than castor sugar is. So I think I'm going to add maybe an extra tablespoon of almonds just to compensate a little bit. The cup and ounce conversions will be in the video description for you. So I'm just going to do everything in grams. I'm going to do 125 grams of the golden castor. Take that to 250 with the light brown soft sugar. Run that through the sieve. I'm going to do 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. This is 56 grams of softened vegan butter. You want it softened, not melted. Mix those together. I'm going to do 3 tablespoons of ground almonds. I think in the States this is almond flour. Pour in the boozy flax gloop. If you're avoiding alcohol, you could try all kinds of different things in there. Maybe orange juice might be quite nice. Work those together. And then I'll put that to the side. We'll do the dust. Well, in fact, yeah, I'll do the dry, add that, and then it can all sit for a while. And then I need 190 grams of plain flour, AP flour. And if you stick around till the end, I've got a couple of ideas that I'll go through with you to make them gluten-free, etc. Teaspoon of baking powder. That'll give it some lift, some fluffiness. Half a teaspoon of salt. And 2 very generous teaspoons of the spice mix that I'm going to use. I've mixed up my own spice blend, so I'll stick what I put in the pinned comment for you. You could grab like a gingerbread spice mix or Lebkuchen, all of that kind of stuff. Sieve all of that together. And I need to remember not to wash the sieve because I need that for the powdered sugar. I'm just going to go in and give it a quick whisk just to make sure it's combined. So I'll do maybe a quarter at a time, third at a time, something like that. And work it in. Just going to switch over to a spatula. Yeah, the mixture is much drier than it was last time, so I guess the extra almonds weren't necessary. Perhaps should have held off on adding those. I'm going to splash in a little bit of port. See if that helps. So I think that's going to be okay. So I probably did half teaspoon to a teaspoon extra port. And of course that ends up giving us a bit more of the port flavour. So I'll push this to the side and make up the dust. A tablespoon of the orange powder. And a tablespoon or so of the sugar. Blend those together. And that's way more than I needed. But you could probably get away with a teaspoon of each. I've got 2 baking trays lined with silicone. I'm going to go for that kind of amount. And just take it onto my hand. Roll them into a ball. Roll that in the dust. The mixture's not sticking to my hand or anything, so it's nice and easy to roll. I've done 8 with the dust on, and then I'll do the rest naked. You can do them whatever size you like. I've gone slightly smaller this time. If you do them bigger, you'll just need to adjust the cooking time a bit. That's one tray filled up. So I'm going to put those in the oven on the middle shelf, and then the next tray will go on top. When I did them the first time, I think the recipe had said 12 to 14 minutes. So I'll set my timer for 14 minutes once both trays are in, and then we'll take it from there. You're looking for them to be kind of slightly firm on the outside, and then I'll take them out, put them on a cooling rack, and they need to cool completely apparently before you can glaze them. Once the cookies are out of the oven, we'll switch everything back on and we'll make up that glaze. I've had the cookies out of the oven for about 5 minutes or so. There's been a development. The light brown soft sugar was potentially a bad idea. I say potentially, I'll explain, I'll show you. So here they are. So they have melted and spread quite a bit. I'll maybe insert a bit of footage from the other video so you can see how different they look. They're very crisp. And I've had one of them and they're a little bit like brandy snaps. If you want them to be like the little domes that I did from the Halloween treats video, just stick to caster sugar or even coconut sugar, which is what I used, and you won't have this problem. It must be the molasses or whatever that's in the light brown soft sugar that's just melted, and perhaps the extra port that I ended up putting in. It was weird though, because I put them in the oven, checked after 4 minutes, and they'd kind of puffed and domed. That was fine. Turned my back, looked again in another 3 minutes, and they just completely melted. But as I say, delicious, and I really do quite enjoy that crispy, chewy texture. I'm going to mix up the orange juice glaze. In my mind, because I was doing the little domed shape, is to do a very thin coating on there so that they'd look like the pfeffernusse. If I can find a stock image of those, I'll slot that in so you can see what I'm on about. Because these are flat, obviously they're not going to do exactly what I was after. I might do the glaze like a zigzag on half of the cookie, something like that. In my bowl, I've got 175 grams of powdered sugar, icing sugar. It's going to be around 1.5 cups-ish. Like, I've looked at 4 different conversion sites and they've all given me a different cup to gram conversion. I've got some orange juice that I've just squeezed. I looked online to find a glaze recipe and it said powdered sugar, hot water. And I thought, oh, it must be necessary to use hot to get the sugar to melt. But then I've just found another recipe on the Spruce Eats, because I Googled if it's possible to add extract into a glaze. And theirs just uses milk. And you don't have to heat the milk. And I've just seen a note that says it does set, but it's not going to go hard. I think if I just do thin lines, it'll be okay. I might add some of this Valencia orange extract. I grabbed this out because heating orange juice changes the flavour of it. So I thought if it's dulled down that bright orange flavour, I might need to add some of this. But because I'm not going to heat the juice, I might not need to. So I'll mix it all together and then whip that in if I need to. I pass the orange juice through my really fine sieve just to get any bits out so it's just pure juice. Otherwise I'd end up with bits of pulp, like, and get lumpy icing, which I didn't really want. You know, not a crucial step. Or you could use a bit of muslin. I'm going to add a tablespoon at a time. Well, maybe I'll do 2. And then we'll whisk it and see what it's like. This was not a good whisk to use. Uh-oh. Do another ½ tablespoon of the juice. Because I might put it through a piping bag. Yeah, I think that'll be all right. I'm going to put a couple of drops of the extract in. I'm happy with that. I'm going to put it into a piping bag. I'm just going to use one of these disposable ones. So I'll stand it in a glass just to make that a bit easier. And then snip a little hole in the bag. I'm going to use one of these little freezer clips just to keep it from flooding back out the other way. Cookies are completely cold now, so I'm going to transfer everything onto a rack. And that'll let any excess fall through the gaps. That's one of the ones that I put the dust on. These are the ones from the lower shelf. They're the ones from the upper shelf. Yeah, and the upper shelf have melted more even than those ones have. Put them on top of a silicone liner just because any excess icing will then just drip through. Just draw a line. Yeah, that'll do. So I think I'll just do that kind of thing. Yeah, on half of it. I think I'm going to leave a few without the glaze just because then there's a bit of variety. That's the amount of frosting I've got left. I'm just going to try and get another freezer clip on it and then I can chuck it in the freezer. I've labelled that up and it can go in the freezer. Our yummy little mulled wine cookies are done. I'm ready for the trying. Given that I don't know how well that glaze is going to set, to what extent, I'm not going to bother waiting 3 hours and then doing the tasting. I'll update the pinned comment with what, how well it sets. I mean, I can see that they've gone a bit matte, like more matte than it was when it went on. So I think it will set firm. I would be wary, if you're wanting something that looks beautiful, be wary of stacking them on top of each other. If I hold one up, at least it's not just pouring off, potentially good sign. Have a go on one. The outside super crisp and crunchy. As you start crunching through it, it becomes very chewy. That's the texture of it inside. So it has got some little air bubbles in there. There's a flavour note in there that I think must be the port. Whether you'd say that's port, that is, if you didn't know it had port in there, I'm not sure. But there is a really nice, round, deep flavour in there on top of the spices. I think to boost that flavour up, it might be worth doubling the quantity of port and then simmering it so it reduces by half, because that will intensify the flavour. I did think about that after I'd mixed the flax seeds into it. I thought, I should have concentrated a bit. But by then it was too late and I'm not going to waste that amount of port and flax. But yeah, I think that would be worth trying. I mean, it's fine as it is. They're very, very tasty. Very festive flavour, kind of comforting. Be nice with a little scotch or a brandy or something, just to cut through the sweetness of it. I will link to the Halloween treats video in the description, the original one where I made the cookies. It'll depend what kind of texture you want on them. If you want something crunchy like that, use the light brown soft sugar. If you want more of a, like a soft gingerbread kind of texture, use caster sugar. I think that's what's happened. It's the only thing I can think that, apart from the port, but I can't see port making that amount of difference. I suspect the light brown soft sugar is melted and almost become caramel, which would explain the snap that those have got. If there was more ginger, that would work really nicely as a ginger snap biscuit. Instead of doing the 2 teaspoons of mixed spice that I did, do maybe 1.5, 1 3/4 of ground dry ginger, perhaps a little bit of nutmeg, a touch of cinnamon, maybe some blade mace, like goes on the outside of a nutmeg. It's got a very bright nutmeg flavour, but also a little bit gingery. So kind of make up another ½ teaspoon from other spices. And that would make a cracking ginger snap. Yes. Don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but if I turn that off, can you see how kind of translucent they are in places? Like if I hold my finger up behind it. Yeah, they're like a cross between a ginger snap and a brandy snap. Things you can make baskets out of and tubes. I'm very happy with that accidental result, which seems to be a commonality here in the kitchen. I might make another batch to nibble on Christmas Day. I think it'd be a nice thing to have, just lying around for snacking. And I think I might do those gluten-free. So I did 190 of flour. I'll either use all gram flour, which is chickpeas and yellow split peas, or I might do 1/3 of it of gluten-free flour. The gram flour will give it a nice cakey, soft texture. I use that in the peanut butter jelly cookies. It's a bit like Fig Newtons, it's that kind of cookie texture. Whereas the gluten-free flour is lighter, so I think together they might add a nice bit of, combined together to make a really nice texture. Whether I do them with the light brown soft sugar or just regular caster sugar remains to be seen. I'll update the pinned comment with any discoveries and how those go. If you don't want to do the glaze step, something that just popped into my head as an idea could be to get some candied orange peel and dice that up quite fine and put that in the dough, and that will give you that orange flavour but without the extra hassle. These are one of the first batch that where I held it, that must have been quite a thick bit because that has smudged, but the rest of it, she says smudging it, I think it's my fingers are hot, so it's melting it a little bit. Yeah, that might be okay actually. I'll leave them for 1.5 hours, 2 hours, something like that. I'll put them away before I go to bed. I keep reaching for one, I'm like, no, Rachel, have your dinner first, like a good girl. It's that part of the video where I say hello and a massive thank you to my community over on Patreon. Their monthly dues helps me keep the channel afloat, because because things ain't cheap at the moment. Patrons get access to bonus content, behind the scenes, community chat features, that kind of thing. Some of them get early access to videos. There are different tiers, so whatever feels affordable for you. I'll link to my Patreon down in the description below for you. If you're on the lookout for lots more plant-based recipes that are sometimes sweet, sometimes savoury, but always delicious. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell icon if you want to get an alert as soon as I publish a new one, while you're waiting for the next one. Have a look at this.